Hola Nancy.
Hola Roberta. All right. I see that it is 5:30. And yeah, just wanting to keep an eye on the time here. I'll maybe give folks a few more seconds to start trickling in or to continue trickling in, but otherwise we'll get started within the next few moments here.
Vemos que algunas personas todavía están ingresando. Vamos a dar unos cuantos segundos antes de iniciar la reunión.
All right. Well, with that, just wanting to honor folks' time, so we'll go ahead and get started. But hello, everyone. Good evening. Happy June, and welcome to our 66th South Fresno Community Steering Committee meeting. As many of you know, or may know, my name is Bikela Ikoba, and I'm here tonight supporting as one of the meeting facilitators. And I'm joined by my fellow facilitators from Harder and Company, Liz and Amy. And so before we officially launch into tonight's activities, would love to just take a moment first to review some interpretation and translation logistics so that all of us are able to meaningfully engage in tonight's conversation. So with that, Tanya, please feel free to take it away.
Thank you. Buenas tardes a todos, bienvenidos a su reunión. Nada más queremos recordarles que ya tenemos la interpretación lista para ustedes. Si ustedes quieren escuchar la reunión en español e ingresaron con una computadora, en la parte de abajo de su menú de Zoom van a ver el icono de un mundo. Por favor, seleccionen ese icono y seleccionen el canal de español. También pueden silenciar el audio original para solo escuchar al intérprete. Y se ingresaron con una tableta o un teléfono móvil, sus opciones van a ser un poquito diferentes. Necesitan tocar su pantalla. Van a buscar el menú con los tres puntitos donde dice más o more, ya sea en la parte de arriba o abajo de su pantalla. Van a seleccionar donde dice interpretación de idioma. En algunos lugares ya nos aparece el icono del mundo también en estos dispositivos. Seleccionen donde dice español. Nuevamente, silenciar el audio original. Y por último, el botón que dice Done, listo o finalizado. Si necesitan ayuda para poder ingresar al canal de español, nos pueden dejar saber en el chat. Ahora voy a repetir mis instrucciones en inglés. Hello, everyone. Welcome to your meeting. This is just a reminder that we are providing simultaneous Spanish interpretation for this meeting. So we ask you to please select your language, even though you speak English. If you want to hear our participants in Spanish, you need to select the English channel. to have that clear communication. If you're joining with a computer, you will see a globe at the bottom of your screen. Please select the globe and select the English channel. If you're joining with a cell phone or a tablet, your options will be a bit different. You need to tap your screen and find the menu with the three dots, either on top or at the bottom of your screen. Select language interpretation, select English, and select done. If you need any help, please let us know in the chat. Thank you very much. You can add me to the channel.
Thank you, Tanya. This is Bikela. So before we get started, we would just like to encourage everyone to please make sure your screen name reflects your this naming convention that's listed here on the slide. If you're a CSC member, that's CSC in front of your full name. If you're a resident and a CSC member, putting an R in front of your full name. This is an important reminder for us as it helps us track attendance, especially for those of you who are participating in the stipend program. And for every other participant, please use this naming convention that you see on the slide with your first and last names, followed by your organization or agency. So just a few reminders for this virtual setting. We encourage you to please ensure that your mic is on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. And if you're calling in by phone, you will need to press that *6 to select the mute or unmute functions. If you have a question or a comment, we encourage you to please raise your hand on Zoom. And if you're calling in by phone, you'll need to press *9 for that feature. And as a reminder, to residents participating in the stipend program, you will need to stay at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend. Our meeting officially starts at 5:30, so you will need to stay until around 7 o'clock to be eligible for that. So we'll take a moment to pause there and would just love to check in to see how we're doing in terms of translation, interpretation. Is everything okay on this end? Would it be helpful to speed up, slow down? How are we doing, Linguistica team? All right, thank you. Okay, well, tonight, as per usual, the Harder and Company facilitation team will be, okay, awesome. I see a couple thumbs up. Thank you. As per usual, our Harder and Company facilitation team will be working behind the scenes to take attendance, offer technical assistance, and and provide that general support to ensure everyone is able to engage fully in tonight's meeting. If at any point you're having trouble with Zoom, interpretation and translation, or anything else, please feel free to message any one of us and we'll be happy to help with that process. As a reminder, please state your name and speak at a slower pace for our interpreters who are working brilliantly behind the scenes and who are humans, so help them out. And we're trying to get better at this habit of stating our name before speaking, as it is an important part of making sure that this meeting is accessible to all attendees. So this is Bikela. And please remember this, as this just ensures that for folks joining us via phone or who are unable to see the screen for any reason or any other a number of reasons, make sure that everyone is able to meaningfully participate. So let's continue diving into the remaining pieces here. So with that, yes, productive discussion and respectful dialogue. So as each of you know, implementation of AB 617 requires authentic collaboration from residents, community advocates, and multiple government officials, just to name a few folks. And so when we have such a diverse myriad of perspectives and priorities, we expect arriving at consensus to be a difficult process. And so for that reason, at the kickoff of this CSC 4 years ago now, which is wild, a collective governance structure and group norms were developed very intentionally. And so one of the hallmarks of your group norms in this Fresno CSC space is the commitment to engage in a productive discussion and respectful dialogue. We do know very well that for AB 617 to produce effective change for our beloved Fresno community, that we must collectively commit to accountability and transparency and authenticity with one another. That said, for tonight's discussion, I would love to particularly elevate the norm, focus on solutions, opportunities, and productive dialogue, as well as this norm that you'll see here on the screen around attacking the problem and not the person. With that, would love to encourage all of us, and again, this is Bikela, to recommit to that effective and powerful conversation for this community in this space. And so, especially in the presence of any disagreement, would love to just invite us to commit to taking a people and community first approach, which really elevates our humanness, which honors people and our experiences, and which intentionally and effectively attacks the problem and problematic structures over people. So people, we so encourage you to say what they mean, to say what you mean and to mean what you say so that we can all have that productive dialogue. And so at the end of the day, we are all here to better our beautiful Fresno community. So with that, would love to just take a moment to name how hard many of you have worked to continue building a more inclusive space and process for this shared Fresno CSC space. And so also just want to thank each of you for that and for your continued willingness to show up and to show up for this community in this way. And with that, we'll share that one lesson that we learned and that has been learned regarding the process from our last CSC meeting is that, for example, having small breakout rooms or breakout groups and roundtable discussions is not a productive or useful way to implement this work in this particular space. And so we would love to just follow up and communicate that. As a result, therefore, we will no longer be using such formats like that in the future. And when we talk about SERP updates today, we will be asking for any additional lessons that you've learned from our last meeting. So for now, we're just planting that seed so you have a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a Fresno, fruit taste of what's coming down later on in our meeting together. So planting that seed now, just so you can be thinking about any recommendations you might have for future meetings. So with that, on this next slide, would just love to briefly cover our agenda for the meeting, which includes welcome and introductions. Welcome, you were introduced. Our action item tracker follow-up, our SERP implementation update, followed by a discussion about the truck reroute study update, standing updates, next steps, and talking about agenda setting, and our final public comment period. So that covers kind of our initial steps for tonight's meeting. And so with that, I would love to invite Ryan from the Air District to provide us with some opening remarks.
Thanks, McKellen. I really appreciate you sharing those lessons learned from last meeting. So great to be here tonight with all of you. And I know it's a packed agenda. We got a lot to talk about, and looking forward to hearing the input from the Community Steering Committee members and the members of the public that we have on tonight. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Ryan. So at this point of the meeting, we typically like to review action items which have emerged from the previous CSC meeting to collectively gain a deeper understanding around the progress which has been made since our last time together. So the purpose of this update is to help really facilitate that transparency and authenticity and accountability for our team and for the AD, as well as to continually and systematically update the action item tracker to ensure that the communities, so you all's requests are being documented and that you're able to stay informed on the progress that's been made towards implementing your suggestions. And so, as a reminder, at the end of every meeting, we do share new action items which have emerged throughout that meeting. And we encourage you just to add any action items that we may miss that should be tracked as well. So, as Nancy provides updates this evening, please feel free to ask for clarification. And any items that need follow up will be noted and then addressed at a future meeting. So I'll also plan to attune to our Zoom chat during this time in case any of you would like to share any comments or questions via Zoom as well. So with that, please feel free to take it away whenever you're ready, Nancy. And this was Bikela.
Thank you, Bikela. This is Nancy. I'm happy to be here with everybody once again. Hope everybody's having, hopefully everybody's ready. Get your cup of tea, cup of water, whatever you want, a refreshment. And let's get into these action items. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody go ahead and see that? Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so we're just going to jump into these action items. We do have a packed agenda today, and I want to be mindful of our time today because we do have the City of Fresno with us today to bring forth some important updates. So we will begin with the in progress action items. And so these are going to be from the in-person May action items. So this is going to be 65.2. And so this is pertaining to the residential lawn and garden measure. And then so a lot of you wanted to see if we can include other additional equipment. And so we are currently looking into this request. And of course, we'll update you as soon as we have the available update for you all. And so moving forward, the CSC would like to discuss reallocating funds to other CERP measures such as the school buses. And so we are going to be providing you with an update today at today's June CSC meeting. Can't believe it's June already. All right. And then please, Linguistica team, let me know if I'm going too fast. And then so moving forward, action item 65.6. The Air District will follow up about the integration and implementation of electric school buses through Fresno school districts. And so this is going to be another update that will be brought to you today in today's presentation. The next action item is pertaining to the one in April. And so this one is regarding outreach with the EV mechanic workforce. And so any sort of updates with regarding EV mechanic training programs will be brought to you all, of course, when we have those updates available. And action item 64.5 kind of goes hand in hand with 64.4. This is also in regards to conducting outreach to local high schools to solicit interest in the EV mechanic workforce program. And so, like I said, as soon as we have any updates, we will go ahead and provide them to you all. I will go ahead and go to the ongoing action item 65.1. This one's from May. The CSC voted to approve reallocating $30,000 to residential lawn and garden measure to support 600 additional mowers and 3 events across the boundary. So we are planning to schedule an event in the fall, and we'll prioritize location in the West Fresno. Next action item, the land use subcommittee will restart to promote agency partnership. And so the land use subcommittee can resume when the city of Fresno is available to meet with the CSC. Moving on, the next action item is from April. And this one is in regards to informed decisions on whether to reallocate funds or change CERP project pathways. The AD will compile a list of previous outreach efforts to engage community and businesses in incentive measures. And yes, the Air District to continue providing CSC updates on outreach conducted on CERP measures during CSC meetings and in monthly CERP trackers. Going back, and then we can finish off with complete. And this action item is from May. The Air District will provide updates to CSC regarding the different emissions impacts from initial projections to current proposed changes of reallocating funds to residential lawn and garden measures. And so the outcome was the Air District estimates approximately 0.3 tons of oxides of nitrogen, NOx, and particulate matter, 2.5, would be reduced by funding an additional 600 units. And the next action item reads, this one's from April. The Air District will develop a fact sheet using information from air filtration manufacturers for CSC members to be able to distribute information. And so doing a little bit of research, it was discovered that if you're running a purifier for 24 hours a day, Every day it would cost around $7 per month. The average annual energy cost per year is about $80.94. And so that concludes the action items for today. I did go ahead and drop down the link down below. If anybody has any questions, please let us know now, or you can also drop your comments in the comment section, of course, in the chat section. All right. All right, I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And then, so we do have a comment. What is the time frame for the city's availability to meet with CSC? Since this has been an active question and interest for members regarding the land use subcommittee. Ryan, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, that was a topic that we've discussed in previous meetings, Dr. Curry, in regards to setting up meetings with the city. One of the things that the city did was they looked to find ways to have not only the CSC but members of the public have a better opportunity to participate in the processes for individual projects. And so that was why it was really important for people to sign up for that email list serve. And we can share that information out again with all the community steering committee members. The thing that the city shared with us, they really want to make sure that everybody's using the same methods and the means to engage on individual projects. And so that was the information that was shared back with the city and why they went to that effort to create that process.
Yeah, thank you for that response. I do feel that we have been talking about the land use subcommittee for many, many meetings, and there hasn't seemingly been any movement. And so even if there's a tool for us to sign up and engage, the overwhelming issue has been that zoning changes or is requested to be changed, that entities are placed in places where we think they are creating more pollution burden than eliminating it. And so the request has been that there be a authentic way to engage with the community and with the CSC members so that we could eliminate this last minute hearing of challenges with land use. And so again, this has been a topic from the very beginning, and it hasn't seemed to move very far. And so if there's a different process or another way to make the process more efficient, I think that would be helpful for us all. But there continues to be this issue around land use, and I don't see that is going away at any time soon.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Curry.
Thank you, Dr. Curry, for elevating this for us. And I see that Ivanka, your hand is raised.
Hi, everyone. This is Ivanka. Thank you, Dr. Curry, for bringing up the issue right on time again, as the city has released its draft environmental impact report and the South Central specific plan, which should be brought forth to this space as a presentation as we're talking about land use subcommittee. That on the city's end, if we're really trying to be in communication with CSC and Air District, that should be a topic of discussion and presentation to this group the South Central specific plan is the boundary of a major part of, not all, a major part of the boundary of our South Central AB 617 boundary. And as Dr. Curry is talking about land use and zoning, that plan that is currently open and in draft to accept comments from the public should be able to use this space for that discussion and a detailed look at what, if any, zoning changes are taking place in the area where we're trying to make sure one of the areas of the South Central 617 boundary has correct zoning according to trying to create and continue emission reductions and protections for the community that are a part of the disadvantaged communities that face these burdens. So as we speak on what Dr. Curry is talking about, and as we speak on this update, this is the update. We're missing prime opportunity to be having a conversation and a presentation by the city about the South Central specific plan that is open for public comments.
Yeah, we'll add that as a definite action item, Ivanka. So basically requesting the city provide a presentation in regards to the draft environmental impact report that was recently released for the South Central specific plan.
Yeah, and the second action item would be the Air District should also be reviewing it on behalf of the AB 617 community too, putting in their own comments.
Okay, we got that down, and we are reviewing it right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivanka, both for naming and clarifying both pieces of the action item. We appreciate that. Also, I apologize. I completely mispronounced your name. So thank you for, your patience with me in that too. Yeah, would love to hear what other questions, concerns are coming up for each of you, any of you. Okay. I don't see any comments in the chat at this time or any other hands raised. But please, for anyone who, any of us who happen to be slower processors or internal processors, if something comes up, please don't hesitate to drop in the chat or to invite us to circle back to what's coming up for you. And thank you, Nancy. And as a reminder, this is Bikela. So at this point in the meeting, we are going to transition into tonight's SERP implementation update agenda item. As a reminder for the process to date, throughout the journey, this 4-year journey of the CSC, this CSC has worked really hard to continue building a more inclusive process for the Fresno CSC, and with your valuable feedback, has been able to submit a SERP that received CARB approval. And in our conversations together, we continue to identify and discuss those key barriers to implementation of the SERP measures. And now, more than ever, our continual conversations around these SERP measures and identifying these barriers and gaps to implementation continue to remain super critical, especially as we seek to come with the creative solutions to coming against these barriers that we're hoping to implement. And so with that, we would love to share gratitude for each of you for generously being willing to continue sharing your opinions, perspectives, and solutions. We want, and I want to recognize that these contributions, your valuable contributions, remain vital to this good and necessary work, and the result of which is Fresno possessing cleaner air for everyone, and especially for those disproportionately impacted by unclean air in our neighborhoods. So please continue opting in And so before we dive into updates on the measures themselves, we even just want to take a moment and invite you to share any lessons learned about the process of even arriving at consensus on a measure and operationalizing the next steps for the SERP strategies from our last CSC meeting. So with that, what comes up for you as a CSC around this? Those lessons learned about the process of arriving at consensus.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan. I just want to elevate kind of the lesson learned that Michaela shared at the beginning of the meeting. And we have and we try to design the meetings to try to get full participation by all the community steering committee members, and using things that worked in maybe in other committees, but it's just a good reminder to all of us that what works in one place doesn't work in all. And so we just always need to be mindful and aware of that, and be willing to make changes to suit the specific community steering committee. So that's I felt like that was a very valuable lesson from the last meeting. And thanks for opening up a space to talk about this, Michaela. Appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Yeah. We really appreciate each of you continuing to share your time, and this is Michaela. And so thank you, Ryan, for that. Well, with that, I am noticing that I'm not seeing any comments in the chat at this point in time. And so for the sake of time and our busy and packed agenda, as always, we'll continue transitioning into this SERP implementation update. But that being said, we know that folks process at different times, so please feel free to share any additional feedback that continues to come up for you in the chat. Raise your hand, any of our typical, or if there are new ways to communicate your interest in sharing a comment or question, please do so. We'd love to hear that. So yes, and well, in all of this being said, in light of the important time and energy that you generously provided the last time we were together in a space as a CSC, we would now like to honor your contributions last month by providing some key updates from our last meeting. So with that, I'll transition back to the AD.
Thanks, Michaela. This is Ryan Hayashi with the Air District again, and I'm going to pull up the presentation and share it at this point. Hopefully everybody can see that. So yeah, I'm going to provide everybody just kind of updates where we're at with the material or information that was shared at last meeting, and the important feedback that we got, and some next steps that are going to happen as a result of that. So we started off, we had two groups and two different tables that we were sharing different information about different programs that we had heard interest in the community steering committee discussing about opportunities to shift funding. And so we talked about the residential lawn and garden, and kind of where we were with the funding for that specific measure, and basically that all the funds have been expended and used up. And so the question was whether or not we should consider shifting funds to provide more opportunities for people to take advantage of that program. And so we did hear support for shifting $300,000. This is something that Nancy shared with in the action items earlier. And it would be at 3 different events across the boundary, starting with one in the fall, and prioritizing having that in West Fresno. So different area from where the previous events have been at the recommendation of the Community Steering Committee. Are there any questions about that? I'm not seeing any. All right. Thanks. So the next one was we had a good discussion about public fleet vehicles. These are vehicles that are used by public agencies. It could be schools, it could be city, county, a lot of different other public organizations qualify for this. So we answered general questions about the program and the requirements and who can apply. The feedback that we got from the CSC was recommended prioritizing organizations that serve communities, such as nonprofits and community-based organizations. And so we made a commitment to look into how to do that. So some of the things that we've done, one of the big things that we heard from people was like finding a way, like one of the organizations that was highlighted in those discussions was the Fresno Economic Opportunity Commission, because they do so much work, especially down in the South Central area. And so we did reach out to them, and they shared with us that they would definitely be interested in applying. And so what we're doing right now is trying to gauge how much they would be able to take advantage and how this program could work for them. And so we're currently working on that portion of it with them. One good thing we did find is that a few years ago, the district actually made an adjustment to the guidelines for the program, because before this Fresno EOC wouldn't qualify under the program, but with the change that our organization made a few years ago, they now do. And so we're working with them to kind of understand how much vehicles they can and how much funding they can use for this program. So that's very good, exciting news. Hopefully we can work with them to quickly make some informed decisions on that. One other thing that, there was one other thing I just wanted to share. So during the last meeting, there was a question of who so far had taken advantage of the program. And so I just wanted to come back and share the organizations that have used the funding. So it's been, these are the entire list of the people that have. So it's been Fresno Unified, the Fresno Fair, the community college, the new campus, and the city of Fresno for the transit. They have a few vehicles in the bus, the people that oversee the transportation and buses, and they were the ones that took advantage. And those are the only ones. So one thing we did talk about, and like getting to the point of opportunities for getting emission reductions, from this program. It was something that we've heard from several community steering committee members about how can we get larger emission reductions from the different programs. And so it really caused us to think, okay, how can we do this? And so we had mentioned fire trucks. And so we did speak with the city of Fresno in regards to this. And so there are 3 stations that have really old engines that they are extensively using in the community. And just in general, the replacement of a fire truck can get you anywhere from 2 to 6 tons of emissions reduction. So it's a lot by replacing one of these, because the engines in these tend to be really old. The older technology tends to last for a really long time if you maintain it, but with that, you also have a lot of emissions. And so there were three fire stations. One is on Fresno and E Street, so that's Station 3, and it's right next to Chancey Park, just to give people an idea where that one's at. The other one is Station 4, which is on First and Tulare. And then the last one is Station 7 off Cherry and Jensen Avenues. And so, we think this may be a good opportunity to get, pretty sizable emission reductions. If we were to look to, work with the city of Fresno to replace those, but definitely wanted to hear CSC member feedback on that.
And could you repeat the piece specifically, Ryan, and this is Bikela, could you repeat specifically the piece that you think, and this could be most beneficial or that you're most yearning to hear CSC feedback?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if that's something that the CSC is interested in supporting, the working with the city of Fresno to get rid of old fire engines, and kind of putting it out there. Without this, there's a likelihood that these will continue to operate within the boundaries for a considerable time.
Thanks for that clarification, Ryan. Ivanka, I see your hand is raised. Go for it.
Thank you. This is Ivanka. Can you remind me which reallocation is this coming from? Is it from the, which allocation is this coming from that we reallocated from?
Yeah, so we wouldn't look to reallocate. It would come from the public fleet. So it'd come from the same one. The only question would be whether to increase the funding amount, because these are a lot more expensive than like a personal passenger vehicle, light duty vehicle.
So how much was the original amount?
It's right now it's 20,000.
That's how much we have.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're asking for the entirety of the funding pot. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ivanka, I didn't understand that. That is $8 million.
And this is coming from the reallocation from, was this one of the, I don't have it up in front of me and I can't find our original measures. Is this the one that is, we originally had 8 million for public fleet, or was this one of the buckets that was reallocated from our engine?
Yeah, so this was the original pot. It's not.
Okay, it is the
It would
original.
not be. Yes.
And how much of that do we have left out of that 8 million?
I'm looking to Nancy. I can't pull up the list.
I'm just wondering, like, when we're talking about engine,
It's a lot.
they're
It's a lot of funding still left in this category, and so one of the things we want to try to get as much emission reductions from that measure as possible, and this would be one where we most likely get a swap out, get rid of the old engine, replace it with the new one, and so a lot of emission reductions.
Okay. Thanks for the clarifications.
Yeah.
Ivanka, I think I heard some back and forth there for a moment. Did you get all of the fullness of your question answered?
Thank you. Yes, I did. And thanks for putting the chart in there.
Okay.
You dropped it in, Nancy. Thank you.
Sweet. Thank you. Thank you, Ivanka. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you for your patience, Eric. Please feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, Eric Payne, CSC member, resident member. Circling back to the Air District's last presentation on this item, there was significant discourse about language that was being used as a part of the guidelines. I just wanted to know if that language was still there or if it had become admissible when you reference emergency response vehicles, because I think most of the discourse was centered around public safety or police vehicles that had been grant funds have been utilized to purchase. So I just wanted to revisit that.
Yeah, and I provided a little bit of clarification on that, Eric. I think that was miscommunicated last meeting. There's been no funding, 8617 funding that has been used for police vehicles. So um, I hope that answers that portion of the question. And the other portion of your question, can you repeat that?
Yeah, just in terms
around the
of
language.
yeah, the guidelines and the language that as you define which public agencies are eligible.
Yeah, so that was one of the exciting things. One of the things that we heard from both groups was looking to work with Fresno EOC as one of the main groups. And so we found that they're actually eligible right now. And so we wanted to work with them to get an idea of how many vehicles they may be able to transition. And with that, kind of based on their response, then work on updating language on for community-based organizations and other nonprofits that do extensive work in the AB 617 boundary.
Oh, okay. Because I know as we kind of like described some of the parameters with the funding, I think one of the other things that we had discussed or brought up was I think the voucher covered up to 20,000, and I think for vehicle purchase, and I guess that's kind of where I is like a gray area for me because nonprofits or public agencies would be able to purchase electric vehicles up to $20,000. However, fire engines far exceed that. And if you're looking to, is the city looking to add 3 additional fire engines based on the
Please.
discovery of the 3 locations that you've identified?
Yeah, so the
Or would
first
it,
step, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there.
no, you're fine.
Yeah, we didn't, they said that they were maybe interested in at least 3, and these were the 3 that they were identified. They left it open for the possibility of more. We didn't get into the amounts that would be needed. We wanted to have this discussion with you first, just to see whether there was interest and support from the community steering committee members to, have those additional conversations.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I think at the end of the day, I think how you roll out the program and the language that you use is going to be dependent on how supportive we are. I think like this is very like 30,000-foot level like staff recommendation or I guess direction that you're seeking without really knowing I think as a member of the steering committee without really knowing how the program is going to work.
Okay. So if like, for example, Eric, on this topic for like limiting it to just fire engines, I think for this, we'd probably try to be really specific, increasing the amount. If we were to provide the language that would be used, to alter the current program plan for it and include the dollar amount and share that with the steering committee and try to get that feedback from everybody. Is that what you were thinking? I mean,
Yeah.
is that the level of information that you and the rest of the committee would help them to weigh in positively or negatively?
Yeah, because I think
Okay.
if the air district is utilizing a fact pattern to support their recommendation, that you would have those addendums available for us to review ahead of the meeting, to make an informed decision on whether
Yeah.
or not we feel as though this would be best served by the community.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric, for that question. Thank you, Ryan. And with that, I saw a comment in the chat, a question in the chat from Dr. Curry a few minutes ago saying, how far would $8 million go towards replacing emergency response vehicles from the fire stations 3, 4, and 7?
Yeah, I know we have they're usually several $100,000, and typically we don't pay, we wouldn't pay a full amount on that. And so it'd be some portion of that. But I think, following the guidance that we got from Eric, I think, we would provide that maybe specifics. It would definitely be a situation where the city would be expected to also contribute.
And thank you. And could you also you mentioned the amount of reduction we would expect with the replacement of those 3. Could you quantify that again, or just have
Yeah,
that? I think that would be valuable information for us to have in comparison to everything else.
Yeah. And the 2 to 6 number was just using some of the data that we've gotten from other organizations similar to Fresno that have used other programs that we've had in the past to try to gauge what those emissions. But we can work with the fire stations to get an exact idea of what emission reductions we'd be looking at, and share that at the same time that we provide the suggested language that Eric mentioned.
Great. The fire station number 3, you said that's at Fresno and E Street?
Correct. So it's just a little bit west of Chichansey.
Well, it's I don't think it's that close to Chichansey. I will say that it's the closest one in West Fresno, because West Fresno proper does not have a fire station.
Thanks, Dr. Curry.
Thank you, Dr. Curry, for that question. And thanks, Ryan. Ivanka, I see your hand is raised. Thank you for your patience. And thank you, Dr. Curry, for your patience while we got to you too. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to state that I agree with Eric, and I think more information, more details as we're trying to make suggestions and changes definitely must come to the CSC before it's really a committed thing that we're moving forward. So I don't really know for sure how it's being communicated out to EOC or the fire stations or anyone else as we're looking, to implement a program. I just want to make sure that it's very much brought back to us before any of these applicants are really thinking that that money is something coming their way.
Yeah. Thanks. All right.
Okay.
With that, one of the other things that was discussed, and there was some concern that was shared by some of the resident CSC members in regards to the number of electric school buses that the city of Fresno was looking to transition. And so just a few notes. So the Fresno Unified is replacing 6 of their dirtiest and oldest school buses in the community boundary. The exciting news is those are actually being built right now, and hopefully those are ready for the start of the school year. The buses that are replaced are for Fresno, and what the information that they showed, they're going to be using them to help them test the technology and plan for further electrification of their fleet, including any additional infrastructure needs that they may have. And so at this time, they shared with us they weren't looking to transition anymore. Several years back, they made the transition. They got rid of the majority of their diesel school buses, and so the remainder of them are fairly newer compressed natural gas buses. Now, understanding those still generate emissions, and still it's beneficial to get those out of communities and reduce those emissions. But that's kind of where the city of Fresno. So that the number that they gave us was the maximum number that they were interested in doing right now. But they are very interested in looking at it once they have these ones and kind of have a better understanding of how they work in totality with the rest of their the fleet of buses that they have. And then just one other point is with the federal funding that's out there right now, and some of the state funding that's what is hopefully still around. There's a lot of money that was still available for helping school districts transition electric fleets, in addition to the AB 617 funding. I see, Ivanka, you have your hand up.
Maybe I didn't quite understand that, but of those 6 buses that you're referring to, are you saying that that's the maximum amount that the Fresno Unified is looking to replace or has in process of replacing as of
They
this
are,
vehicle?
yes, they are in the process. So they've already submitted applications. They've identified the buses that they're going to get rid of, and they're the dirtiest
Okay.
ones that they have in their fleet.
Okay.
And
And
getting
so
rid of those ones.
are those 6 already being done without 617 funding, or that was including 617 funding?
That was with 617 funding.
Okay, and so then the next question is, of those 6 buses that are in progress, are all 6 of those buses going to be within the 617 boundaries?
Yeah, what was shared with, so they don't have the specific routes, but both the contract that they signed with us says that they have to operate them there. And then in addition to that, the school district has also shared with us that, yeah, they're only going to be used in serving schools within the boundary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ivanka. And I see 2 hands raised, Bill Jensen and Venice Curry.
I think Dr. Curry was first.
Thank you, Ryan. Dr. Curry, would you mind sharing first?
Yeah, sure. That was part of my question, was the clarification around the bus routes. And when you say the 6 that are the oldest and the dirtiest, I don't know what that means in terms of where they're currently, what their routes look like, but I would want assurance that it isn't running from north to south, so that those buses that are impacting our kids because of the cumulative burden they already bear, that those would be within the AB 617 boundary, and that seems like would be a requirement and not optional.
Okay. I'll tell you what, Dr. Corey, we will make that an action item. And so once those buses are delivered and they have set routes, we will bring back that information to the steering committee. And I apologize for my cat jumping in front of my screen.
Hello, Ryan Scott. This is Mikela. Thank you for that question, Dr. Curry, and thank you, Ryan, for elevating that as an action item for us. We'll be sure to and are indicating that as an action item at this time. And thanks for your patience, Bill. Please feel free to go whenever you're ready.
Yes, Bill Johnson, CSC member. I was just had a question. Dr. Curry had mentioned that West Fresno didn't have a fire station, and I was curious if the $6 million, if there was a fire station needed, could we add a fire station with the brand new $6 million buses, or is that not needed in the West Fresno area? So in addition, in other words, add brand new $6 million buses, instead of replacing the ones that are kind of outside of the area, with a whole fire station in the West Fresno area. I don't know if it's needed or not. I just thought I'd bring that up. That's all.
Yeah, it's probably not a question of, well, let me just start with the AB 617 funding. That definitely would not be something that the 617 funding could be used for. So I just wanted to share that.
I was thinking just for the buses, I mean, just for the fire trucks, not the building. You know, if there was other funds for the building, if the 6 million could go towards brand new fire trucks to handle that area, which would save the pollution factor because they would be used more in the area.
Okay, and that's kind of what we were talking about, Bill, and we're going to get you language that you can look at as well as the rest of the community steering committee members. We're going to work with the city of Fresno to understand how many total fire engines they would be able to do. We're going to get the emission reductions that would be expected from the replacement of those engines, and basically the cost or the what they would need in order, like financially, in order to be able to do that, and share all that information with the community steering committee.
Thank you, Bill. That's a very great idea. And of course, West Fresno would need a fire station just like any other community.
Yeah. All right. The last is an exciting piece of news, and we're excited for you to, like, those of you resident members that have a vehicle that qualifies and have an interest and ability to participate in this. This is the passenger vehicle repair and replace programs. Those are open, and so people can start submitting applications, but understanding that there are some questions that people may have about the program. We are working with Valley Can, that then they're working on hosting events. So in addition to that, they can always visit our website, and the contact information is on there as well. But we found that the in-person events are really, really valuable and important, and we see a lot of attendance for this. So both so we have the vehicle repair, that's where we do the in-person events. But in addition to that, there's also, if anybody's having car troubles, we have a few, and maybe Nancy.
Brian, this is Liz. So sorry to interrupt. Could you change the slide? I think we're still on public fleet vehicles.
Oh, that's okay. I apologize. I don't know why it
Thank you.
stopped working. I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'm gonna reshare because I don't know why it didn't like that. Does everybody see the passenger vehicle repair and replace slide now? Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
thank you.
So the passenger vehicle repair, there's two options for that one. There will be an in-person event in Fresno, most likely the fairgrounds, because it has the biggest area, and we've been able to successfully do those in the past. And this would be for AB 617 residents to come and get their vehicles checked, and if they have any issues with it, they can get a voucher for repair. Now, if you're having current problems with your car, you don't have to wait for that event. You can go on our website, and there's a link to a listing of providers that actually will do a check on vehicles and figure out if it passes or not, and then they would also be able to give you that voucher. So that's exciting. And then the other one I was talking about was the vehicle replace, which is for vehicles that are 2006 and older, and it allows you to replace that vehicle with a plug-in hybrid or an electric vehicle. We just had an event in another AB 617 community, Arvin, yesterday, and there were 66 residents that showed up, and a lot of good questions. We see a lot of people that attend those events actually follow through and go through it. So, we're excited to continue to provide updates on this. The first event is going to be at Mountain Mike's Pizza on East Kings Canyon Road on June 25th, and that'll run from 5:30 to 7:30. And so please, if you know anybody that needs that help, needs that assistance, is looking to replace their vehicle, please share this information. We also have shared this out in emails, and we'll continue to provide this information out to the steering committee members to share it out with more their neighbors, their friends, their family, anybody they know.
Thanks, Ryan. This is Michaela. I just want to interrupt you super quick just to elevate Lilia's question before we get too far.
I didn't see it.
No problem. Yes, the comment said, Lilia would like to know if organizations like Familias and Acción could get a new truck through this measure. Does it have to be a replacement?
It does for this. Yes, it has to be a replacement. I will have to look at organizationally. I think if anybody owns the vehicle and they live within the boundaries, I think it would qualify. But I will, we will look into that, Lilia, and we will call you and speak to you, or we may work with Valley Can to reach out and speak to you directly.
Thank you for your question, Lilia.
Thanks, Lilia. And then the last, just working, I don't know, the next update that we have is the urban greening event that was held on May 25th, and this was with Central California Environmental Justice Network and Tree Fresno. Having gone to Computech and Edison and live not too far from there, this is exciting news for me as a former Tiger. That we were able to put in these vegetative barriers at the school, urban greening measure. I apologize, not vegetative barriers, urban greening measure, where 60 or 59 plants or trees were planted, and they had over 60 volunteers, and mostly it was youth was in attendance and was excited to chip in and help out. And so it's just great seeing the youth in action and making a betterment to their community and their school. And at this point, I will turn this over to Zong. I see that she's on to talk about our community outreach events that we've done recently.
Thanks, Ryan. Good evening, everyone. This is On with the Valley Air District. Just want to share a couple of the events that we've been going out to in the community. On June 1st, we were out at Ving Pao during their Southeast Asian Family Conference and distributed some air purifiers. And it was exciting to see a lot of the families out there, and also signed up some families who qualified for the Valley-wide program. So that was a nice event. And then on June 3rd and 4th, we went to a couple of locations, the Maxey Parks Community Center and West Fresno Middle School, where we had presentations, air quality presentations with the students with the Sweet Potato Project. And so that was kind of fun. It was exciting to see all the students engaged in the presentation that we had. It's an interactive presentation, so they were able to answer questions and test their knowledge about air quality. So that was a lot of fun. Ryan, next slide, please. And then a couple of events coming up tomorrow and on Monday and Tuesday. We will be at several locations that are part of the Rainbow Housing projects, and so location sites. And so we'll be providing air quality presentations as well as helping residents sign up for the Clean Air Rooms program. And so as long as residents bring their information with their address, then we will help sign them up. So that will be exciting as well. And so if you have any friends, families that are at those locations, please share with them that we will be there. We will be at all the locations between 10 and 11:30. And I believe we will be in the community center or community rooms providing the presentations. And that's pretty much it for right now. If there's any questions, please let me know. If you, again, have any events coming up, please share them with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zong. For the sake of time, we'll at this point transition to the next agenda item for the evening. And so with that, I'll transition to Liz.
Thank you. This is Liz. Hello, everyone. So at this time, I am happy to transition us to the truck reroute study update agenda item. So in a moment, we will be hearing an update from the city of Fresno on the latest draft of the truck rerouting and implementation strategies report and their community engagement work. I want to acknowledge that we do have some newer CSC members who are part of this group now and a little less familiar with this work. And we also have some CSC members who have been a part of this from the beginning 4 years ago. So just for some context, this was one of the first CERT measures that the South Fresno CSC prioritized 4 years ago, and it has remained a top priority. We want to recognize, again, all of the work that so many of you have done to make this study such an important part of your CERT, which was even a lot of work to get approved by CARB in the beginning because this was so new to this kind of process. So scientific studies like this are typically slow, as some of us may know, and they take time to implement and conclude, and especially when they involve multiple agency partners and have so much complex data being collected. So one of the many reasons why these types of studies can take so long to implement and may leave us with more questions than answers is because they are designed to test hypotheses, theories, or objectives that are guiding the work and the way that the data are collected and ultimately understood are determined by the research team who is implementing the study. And so that's often why by the time we get to this point, when we learn about the findings, they may not align with our expectations. Just want to share, I know not all of us are so familiar with the scientific process. It is self-correcting, as some may say, where you often have to wait for the next study or two to get the information or evidence that you need. And that can be very frustrating when these issues are so urgent and directly tied to people's health and well-being. And so more importantly for this truck reroute study and the space we're in tonight, just want to, say that it's not a secret that many of you here, your expectations just have not aligned with the outcomes of this study. We have heard that from many of you and want to acknowledge that. And we also want to normalize that that's okay and it's a part of this process, and it shows why it's so important for everyone to stay engaged in this work in the long term, even when it's hard and frustrating. And so just again, want to thank you all for being here and still showing up to engage in these conversations, both the CSC and all of our agency partners who are involved. So as Andrina from the city of Fresno will mention, the city is still open to some feedback and is here to share what those next steps might look like. And they have a brief presentation before we will open it up for questions and discussion. And so at this time, I'm happy to pass it to Andrina from the city of Fresno.
Thank you, Liz. Quick question. Will I be sharing the presentation myself?
I believe so, but if you do not, I think maybe Nancy has the slides and might be able to share those.
This is Nancy. I went ahead and dropped down the English version of the trucker route study, as well as the Spanish version of the trucker route study. Would you like me to share the English version?
Let's see. I might be easier for me to go through it. If I can get it to work on my end. Sorry about that. Can you go ahead and share it for me, please? I'll instruct you for the next slides.
This is Nancy. Of course I can. I'll go ahead and pull it up.
Thank you. Okay. Andrea Aguilar with the City of Fresno Public Works Department here. I am the project manager on this effort. As most of you know, this was a partnership between the Air District and City of Fresno to conduct a truck study for the AB 617 area. For those that are new, first of all, welcome. And these efforts have started a while back, but officially this project started in 2022. The city selected a consultant for the truck study itself, and then with the guidance and help of CSC members, it was also recommended for us to conduct a health assessment with the help of a university, in this case, the University of California, Merced. Next slide, please. So the objective of the study was to decrease the impact and improve the truck impacts and improve the community safety in South Central Fresno, while maintaining a productive movement of goods throughout the town, throughout the city and in this area, which has seen many issues with trucks kind of bypassing through neighborhoods or trucks where they're not supposed to be, or idling in neighborhoods. We wanted to make sure to identify those sensitive receptor areas, such as residential and schools, and try to reanalyze the truck network, the truck route network, to move these routes away from these sensitive receptors. Next slide, please.
Andrea, this is Liz. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to note, in case it wasn't clear, I think the link for the Spanish presentation is in the chat. So for our Spanish speakers on the call, if you could click that link, and if you're having any trouble following the slides, please do let us know, because we can, I think, figure out a way to have both displayed together. So if you're not able to click the slides and follow along in Spanish, do please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Go ahead and move on to the next slide. There's a Venn diagram shown on here, which really helps illustrate the process of how we got to the end product. And that is where we're at currently. It's the truck rerouting and implementation strategies report. That is what we all have been working towards. This is with the help of CSC members, with CSC subcommittee members that were more involved in the truck reroute study itself, with other agencies, governmental agencies, CBOs, the public. It's really an effort of all different parts and components to come up with this report. The Venn diagram shows that there was an analysis done for looking at the existing conditions, what our city is currently laid out, where the issues are. You then throw in the goals and the goals to maintain goods and products movements. We have to keep that in mind as well, because we need this movement of goods. We need the transportation of these items. It's crucial to our economy as well. We also, the consultant also had to bring in the best practices throughout the United States, like what's commonly used. How do you educate people on new routes? And moving those forward. The other component was looking out to the community for feedback as well. The community is the ones that are directly impacted. They see the trucks. They know where they feel unsafe on walking along a roadway because of truck traffic or the speed of the trucks, and just having more complete streets in that portion. The other element that comes into play as well is the health assessment, is assess AB 617 and provide some recommendations on how we can better accommodate the neighborhood AB 617 in creating some type of, in this case, it turned out to be buffers for the community. All of these different components kind of put into a Venn diagram, gives you that center point where we found this would be the balance between all efforts. Next slide, please. So the analysis, as I mentioned, was different components here. I'll cover the outreach, the existing conditions analysis report, and the best practices report. As part of the outreach plan, what we heard from the CSC members that served on this subcommittee was that we need to really engage with the community and those that live there. One of the recommendations that we heard from CSC members was doing pop-ups. If we were to do pop-ups, to make sure that they weren't at random locations on a random day at a random time, to really find locations where people congregate or are at. And we were successful in identifying 2 events that we attended as pop-ups, and we had there was a large turnout, and we were able to get a lot of information from the public that way. The other thing we heard from the CSC members was to focus on those community centers where people come and congregate and to learn more about projects in their community. We did that during the community meetings, trying our best to find those community centers that were available to us that we could meet. And then we were always encouraged to use like local CBOs and the CSC members that are part of the committee, but also those that are part of the subcommittee who were instrumental in finding these locations and finding adequate times and making those connections. And they've helped also bring awareness to the residents that this truck study was going on. The existing conditions report, that one consisted of a consultant analysis of all the existing plans that are available, have been adopted, that are current, active. And then the bigger part is the residential I'm sorry, the residents' concerns. So we went out to the residents and community events to gather that information from the public, people who live in AB 617, those that work in AB 617, the local businesses. The best practices report is it covers the safety aspect of our roadways, while a truck route, if a street stays a truck route, how do we make it safe for users to be able to use that route? It covers the environmental impact, community engagement. What's the norm for community engagement, education? How do we involve the public? And it also covers some case studies on different cities throughout California in which these efforts were also similar and what happened there. Next slide, please. And this would be our outreach process. Let's see. Okay, so giving a bigger idea of the outreach and the engagement activities. We heard from the CSC members that we need to identify stakeholders. Part of the scope of this project was to put together a technical steering committee, or a TSC, and to also put together a community advisory group, CAG. Along with the community advisory group, the CAG community, we were advised by the CSC members to, rather than the city selecting who should be on there, we went out to the public and encouraged recruitment for anybody who wanted to be involved, that this was the best place to really have your voice heard and act as a community champion to be able to spread the word within their circles as well. The community events that were held, we had a robust outreach efforts. In January of 2023, that's when we did the community recruitment for the CAG. We had plenty of people apply. It was a team of about 14 individuals who were part of the CAG, and they met regularly throughout the process of the course of the project. They met 6 different times, as did the TSC committee as well. During the outreach plan, it was noted that we needed to do stakeholder interviews, more one-on-one situations. We had a couple of those. We had, I believe, a total of 3 sessions, and we offered virtual and in-person. CSC members really wanted us to provide different options for people to be able to comment. The pop-up events that we went to or we attended were the Fiestas Patrias and the trunk or treat at Maxi. These had the most exposure to residents. I believe there was over 600 interactions between both of the events. This is where we got the most feedback from the community on the existing conditions of their neighborhoods. Late last year, once the consultant gathered the existing conditions information, then it was time to look at different strategies that could be implemented. So we went back out to the community and heard from them on what type of strategies would be beneficial in your community. We provided options and residents would select options, and they said, I would like this type of option here. I think this would be nice here. We need more sidewalks here. We need maybe a crosswalk here. I'd feel safer with these improvements. Let's see. and I just noticed there's a error on this slide. So recently we had community meetings, January 2024, not 2023. We attended the community meeting in Malaga. At this meeting, it was brought up to us by residents and CSC subcommittee members that we needed more. We needed more community outreach. We needed to show how the health assessment informed the truck study, and we heard those concerns. We worked with the consultant and we added a few more meetings, and those were held in May 2024, not 2023. We were asked to hold meetings in Southwest Fresno because Southwest Fresno was the most impacted, or Central Fresno, and we did. We had one of those meetings in Ted Wills Community Center, and we had the second one at Maxiel Parks. And then the third meeting was virtual to provide that option for people who could do it from home rather than driving to one of the centers. The next slide, the common feedback. The feedback that we heard back from all of the stakeholder interviews, from the pop-up event, the community meetings, just comments that were submitted to the city. What we heard was that there was safety issues for pedestrians and cyclists, bicyclists on these roadways. Truck behavior issues. This could be something like trucks driving too fast along a road. The roadway infrastructure was also a concern that came up with residents. So the conditions of our roadways, potholes with the high speed of a truck going through, they didn't feel safe. The other concern we heard was the community input. We heard this from CSC subcommittee members that we needed to do more input, which we did. We acknowledged that, and more input is good. So we added those 3 meetings to help out with that feedback we received. Health assessment informing the truck study. You'll see that the health study recommendations were key factors into identifying where we could remove truck routes and creating this 1,000-foot buffer around these routes to reduce the truck impacts on those residents that live along those corridors. We also heard concerns about truck traffic along Cherry Elementary, near Orange Elementary on Cherry Avenue. And you'll see on our revised proposed map that we hope this resolves those issues there. Online accessibility, which is why we provided in-person meetings and not all on online or virtual. Common concern too is trucks driving through neighborhoods. We hope that through education of the businesses and the drivers, we can reduce that or eliminate that, hopefully through that education, to eliminate the bypass routes that seems to be a problem in the neighborhoods. We also heard concerns through the businesses. Their concerns were around removal of routes that they commonly use in their day-to-day business. Okay, so as I mentioned, the draft the draft truck routing and implementation strategies report. This is what all of the efforts that have been done in the last 2 years. This is where they were all put together to provide this proposal of a network in AB 617 that eliminates many routes. It does propose a few, but those proposed are so that the network works. So next slide. So here on the left, you'll see the existing truck route map, which was from back in 2005. On the left, on the right, you have the proposed truck route map with these efforts that have been done. It's a little difficult to see here because of the image being so small. One of the concerns we heard, and I completely understand, was that it was difficult to read these maps in the report itself. So we went back to the consultant and asked if we could somehow make this electronic, something that we can have people zoom in, zoom out, turn on layers, and they were able to push a map out quite quickly to be able to provide that. If it's possible, would you be able to click on the link that says proposed truck route map? That should open.
Is it going to be in Spanish and English?
The map that was created is in English.
Just our best practices in these meetings to make sure that we show everything bilingual.
My apologies, it was created just in Spanish. Would you like to not share it?
Yeah, unless you want to point to some certain things so that our Spanish speakers can be oriented to what you're showing them.
I'm sorry, how would you like for me to address that?
Oh, if there's something that you want us to look at in this map, maybe you can orient us to that so that we can make sure that our translation team translates that to Spanish.
Yes, I can do that. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see layers that can be turned on and off so you can compare the existing 2005 truck route map and what is being proposed as the network with this project. The red pinkish color that you see, those are truck regulated areas. These areas are heavily residential, and the report identifies this area as areas that trucks should not be using as bypass and proposing to eliminate those routes. Would you please turn off the proposed truck regulated areas? Okay. Would you please turn off the proposed truck routes? Thank you. This is the blue lines that you see, light blue and dark blue. Those are the truck routes as they currently exist. Would you please remove or turn off the existing truck routes and turn on the proposed truck routes layer? Proposed truck routes. Thank you. If you look here, a large portion of those truck routes that previously or currently existing are proposed to be removed. Some of those include, let's see, we have California, Jensen, Elm, Walnut, Fruit, in Southwest Fresno. And over in the Tower area, we have Olive that's being proposed as a removal. If you look closely, and you'll find some orange segments. Those segments are the segments we have proposed to add with this with these efforts to make the network work for those businesses and those trucks utilizing as well. You can go back to the slideshow. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, our truck routes. What came out of the health assessment recommendations, the biggest factor was recommending a 1,000-foot buffer for truck routes. And there's an image in the report that illustrates the buffer around those areas that are heavily residential. And around those other sensitive receptors such as schools. This buffer helped identify these truck regulated areas, which then in turn eliminated these truck routes, as I previously mentioned on the interactive map. Next slide. So the biggest component of what we hoped with this plan was to remove truck routes where they weren't necessarily needed. The other component as well was to find strategies that would address the concerns that we heard from the public. Many members from the public, not only it wasn't only asked that we remove truck routes, but we were asked to improve the experience on those truck routes that would remain. And some of these strategies are listed as a strategies toolkit, which would include truck focus signage, the truck regulated areas, sidewalks where we have sidewalk gaps or non-existing sidewalks, to improve crosswalks, improve bike lanes so that bicyclists feel safer using these routes. Then there's also the non-infrastructure component to it. This is more of the education on which are truck routes, which are not, what to do. Zero emission trucks, which are more statewide efforts. Truck-specific GPS systems, which would tell a truck driver which routes they should be using, which roads they should be using. And then there's the implementation of policies, funding opportunities, and prioritization of some of these strategies that the public requested or advised to put in.
Andrina?
Yep.
This is Liz. Sorry to interrupt again. I'm just looking at the time. I know you have quite a few slides left. We are running a little late, and we do have at least one question so far. So I'm wondering, could we maybe pause and get this question answered? Maybe see if any other questions have come up. And
yeah. Okay,
sounds good. So I see a question from James in the chat. Please elaborate on the buffer zones. For example, rules and regulations regarding operating in the buffer zones.
And I'm assuming it's in the chat, so I can reread it.
Yes. And I can reread it too.
Okay, please.
Yeah, so James is asking if you could please elaborate on the buffer zones, specifically the rules and regulations regarding operating within the buffer zones. And James, I see you unmuted, so I want to give you a chance to share a little bit more.
Yeah, it's a pretty basic question. So I see the buffer zones and I definitely understand why they're established. I just have a question. Is it a 100% no-go zone or again, the rules and regulations regarding within operating? I'm assuming we want to keep folks out of the buffer zones, but what if someone has a property they have to get to, like they have to cross through the buffer zone, or they like, what's the rules regarding either operating on a street that's not part of the route? Like if there's a business that's not on the route, but has to go to the route and cross through the buffer zone. I'm just trying to figure out some of these questions.
Thank you, James. This is Andrina again.
Of course.
Okay, so the 1,000-foot buffer was a recommendation that came out of the health assessment. What that recommendation is to move that there should be a buffer, 1,000-foot buffer between sensitive receptors such as residents and a truck route. It doesn't make any recommendations on rules of usage within those buffers. It's a recommendation to maintain a buffer between residential and a truck route. To address the other question about using a street, whether it's truck route or not truck route. So if a business is located along a corridor street that is not designated a truck route, that business is still free to use the roadway if their destination, their origin is along that roadway.
No, fantastic. And I had looked at the routes earlier, so that's what I had assumed I had read, but thank you for clarifying that.
No problem. Thank you for your question.
This is Liz. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Andrina, for pausing. I'll just ask again if there are any other questions or comments coming up from the CSC at this point. I know that was a lot of information and there was still more to be shared. So yeah, just want to make sure you all have some time.
Thank you, Liz, for the reminder to pause and ask for questions. If we can get back to the slideshow. Next slide, please. Okay, the other important component of the truck study was the health assessment. And thank you for moving on. So the health assessment, which was done by the University of California, Merced, UC Merced, it goes through and acknowledges that Fresno County has some of the nation's greatest environmental inequalities, and that air pollution has, through the report, it goes on and links air pollution with health outcomes. The health assessment goes on and explains as well that there was two components to this. The first component was a citywide assessment, which looked at record information, whether it was with emergency room visits, data, demographical information. The second portion was a South Fresno community survey that was done by UC Merced and some partners there. Next slide. The objectives of the health assessment was to determine the impacts of the proximity of truck routes and on the risk of preterm births and infant mortality between 2009 and 2019. And second, to determine the impact of air pollution exposures on the risk of preterm births, infant mortality, childhood asthma, and cardiovascular diseases between 2011 and 2020. Third, estimate the excess number of preterm births, infant mortality, asthma, and cardiovascular disease cases that potentially attributed to the air pollution in the area. And the fourth was to go out to the community and take survey and understand their environmental concerns for AB 617 for those that actually live in the area. Next slide, please. The key findings that the health assessment found are listed here. They found that in Southwest Fresno, residents on average were more likely to live near a truck route, a major street, or a freeway. And you look at a map and we can see that. It also found that exposure to air pollutants were associated with a higher risk of the health concerns that are listed here as well. It also found that pregnant people who lived within 1,000 feet of a freeway, truck route, major road, had significant higher risk of adverse pregnancy outcomes. It also identified that the preterm births and infant mortality and asthma rates were higher among the residents that lived within the AB 617 community in comparison to those that live outside of the limits of the boundary. They also addressed and explained seasonal effects as well. The effects of PM 2.5 were stronger in the cold seasons, and the ozone effects were stronger in the warm season. Next slide, please. The community health survey, the goal of this was to understand the residents' health and experience related to truck traffic and environmental issues within the AB 617. They reached almost 1,800 households and did surveys with them. The key findings are listed here. High levels of concern for environmental health related to the road conditions, which in line with the comments that we received during the outreach community meetings and during pop-up events and the stakeholder interviews as well. It revealed that residents support the redirecting of trucks away from local residential areas. It also, the key finding of about a quarter of reproductive aged women have reported some type of adverse pregnancy outcome. And also identified the 1,000-foot residents who live within 1,000 feet of a truck route or major freeway or road were prevalent to higher chronic health conditions and adverse pregnancy outcomes. Next slide, please. So after the analysis from the health impact assessment that UC Merced did, they made recommendations. These recommendations are listed here. And these recommendations were informed the report that I just presented on as well. This is where the 1,000-foot buffer came in. It came into the recommendations from our consultant to maintain that buffer for residential areas and sensitive receptors such as schools. Another key recommendation that they made was the use of zero-emission commercial trucks was recommended to reduce pollution exposures to reduce pollution exposure. And these efforts align with state recommendations in the upcoming years to go to zero emissions. Next slide, please. So next steps. So then the next step here would be to look through and evaluate and consider all of the comments that we've received from residents, from local CBOs, from CSC members, and industry as well, business owners, revise our report to incorporate comments, address comments, and ultimately go to City Council as a presentation. This document would ultimately be recommendations to at some point make these changes. One of the first things that would happen would be to revise the truck route map that was previously adopted or approved back in 2005. So moving forward to now show those maps, those routes that have been proposed with the analysis of both the truck study and the health assessment. That'll conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions.
This is Liz. Thank you so much, Andrina, for coming here and presenting for the group. I will pause and see if any folks have questions or comments at this time. Yeah, Ivanka, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation, Andreina. I think my first question actually is, how much time does the CSC have to give input? I think this for the CSC is really the first presentation that we've gotten to see as a whole. So how much time do we have to give input? Because the open comment period for the general public was closed before we have this CSC meeting. So I feel like this team, this crew that's on tonight has the right to have time to actually review it. And also, more importantly, the interactive map that we can see is really telling for residents to be able to actually look at it and say, oh, nothing has changed in my community. Matter of fact, is there actually more routes now in my community than there were before? So is there opportunity in those inputs that you're receiving from the CSC to readjust and still looking at those routes that you've presented tonight?
Thank you, Ivanka, for your question. Yes, the comment period, which began May 10th and went through to June 10th, has ended. But I'm happy to take CSC members' comments in the next couple of days. If you can get them to me before Friday, that'd be great. We can add them in. We're still going through the comments that we've received so far. And if I recall correctly, we did share the draft report being out back in on May 10th when it was available to everybody else for commenting. And I do know that a few of you attended the community meetings where that presentation went more in depth to the report itself.
And then the next question, I don't know if this is really a question, but it's more of a discussion comment for this group. Earlier, I had mentioned that the South Central specific plan is actively being in public for review. And the thing that this truck reroute, it may talk about buffers, yes, but there's no recommendations and there's no including in this truck study report the importance of zoning and the land use. So understand that while there may be regulated routes, there may be truck routes that are added it is all at this point in alignment with what the technical advisory committee, which is made up of the city, the county, Caltrans, Fresno Council of Government, all the people that want to see South Fresno continue to be industrialized, they're not going to approve or advise for a truck study to go against a specific plan that is made for zoning for more industry. So I'm here to give everybody the bigger picture and make sure that we're not just siloed into looking at a truck study, but understand how that's directly impacting and how they are impacting each other, a specific plan. So my concern specific to the truck study is that you have spaces that may right now, when this gets adopted, state, oh, there's no more trucks that are going to be able to just be non-regulated. They're only regulated to go through certain areas at certain times if they have a business there. One of our other CSC members earlier asked about confirming if there's a truck business, if there's a business that needs deliveries, how are those trucks going to get there? So if they're currently there, yeah, the trucks are still going to go that route because that business is already there. But understand, if the zoning in the specific plan right now might just be agriculture land that's blank, just bare, but they're still zoning it for uses that need heavy rigs to come through. Right now, it could be regulated and it's only a temporary fix, specifically along Orange Avenue, Orange Community School on Cherry Avenue, I mean, or where we're seeing, and Lilia can speak more to this, along Cedar Avenue, where open parking lots are used for the Amazon vans, right? So we can't look at this in its own just as a truck study. The truck study is directly related to the land use. And if the land use is not included as what recommendations need to be changed in this report, then this report is not that helpful for community, or is it going to in a long term, even protect the community? Because the moment a property is purchased for the purpose of being of anything that needs heavy duty trucks, then what was regulated is now necessary for that truck to go to that area, because you didn't actually zone the land near sensitive receptors to also be buffered from those heavy uses.
Thank you, Ivanka, for your comment and questions and concerns. I completely understand where you're coming from. But I would like to reiterate that the purpose of this study was to evaluate our truck route network, wasn't to evaluate land use. I do know there are different efforts going on, specifically with the South Central specific plan that's currently out for public review. If you'd like to be more involved and in those efforts, I'm sure you already have, or you already are looking at those. I understand your concerns, but this project was specifically scoped for just the truck routes themselves. And we can only look at what is currently existing as land use versus something that will possibly change in the coming months.
Yeah, thank you for the question and response. I see we have another hand up from Natalie. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to make just two major comments. I just feel like in the future for CSC meetings where there is a SERP like this, and obviously all the SERPs are important, but we're kind of closing the truck reroute study, so I feel like we're already at the end of the meeting. I feel like there should have been more time and space to prioritize all the findings that had happened, just because there was so much information about the UC Merced health assessment findings, so much health impacts that a lot of residents have been sharing for decades. Maybe they may not have had the data, but all that data from the UC Merced Health Assessment really verified a lot of the concerns. And I think going back to, just land use, like, I just want to just say that, these communities, our communities, they don't exist in a silo, like these trucks are coming from specific facilities, right? And I think it's important in the recommendations to highlight that, truck routes, yes, land use may not have been an objective of this study, but it is a big component of where truck routes, their destination and their origin, or where they essentially end up at, right? And so, like, for example, like with the buffer areas or with the regulated areas, we see that, yes, they may be regulated areas, but trucks are still allowed to enter, even though routes have been taken away. So at the end of the day, community is still getting exposed to DPM and PM 2.5 because trucks are still allowed to go through these sensitive receptors and reach the facility they need to if it's in a community with a high cumulative burden. So I think I just wanted to reiterate that our health doesn't exist in a silo, that a lot of these policies are very like intersectional and integrated, and I think that's what we're looking for, is like a holistic approach in terms of like these recommendations, right? And really addressing that, these trucks, they end up coming into the communities at the end of the day, and it just shows a larger issue of the siting and zoning of facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And we hear the feedback too about the ordering of the meeting, and should have given this more time. And yeah, thank you for that. I see another hand up from Dr. Curry.
Yeah, I won't repeat everything that was said because I think it was already presented in such an excellent way, and the concerns I share as well. I do want to point out the reason that it makes sense to look at infant mortality is because it's always been a measure of the health and well-being of a community and a neighborhood. And so when you give those statistics and you look at what the outcomes are for infant death, it basically tells you what's missing in a community. And so in addition to the fact that there's a solid relationship between exposure to air pollutants, and we've already looked at that part of it, I'm just curious, given that the city has paid for this information, that they have it available to them, how do you envision utilizing this information in discussions about land use? And you maybe don't have an answer, but I'll just tell you that my expectation is that given the information and the data, that in situations where there's a question of placing additional pollutant burden into communities, you would be sitting on this data, and whether or not, I guess the question is whether or not your comments will reflect what you have already discovered, what people have been saying for decades, but what you have recent evidence and data for. And so will the Air Pollution Control District pull this out and say, by the way, here's a study that tells us what the impact is on the health of our citizens? Will the city utilize this in a way that says, yes, we want to put something like an industry in Southwest Fresno, but we have this health impact data that tells us that it creates additional health burdens and economic burdens, and perhaps we ought to look somewhere else. So it's a question that I'm not sure I expect an answer, but I do think that it ought to be considered in the scope of all of the other issues that have been brought up here: land use discussions, pollution burden, health impacts. So thank you for the study. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Curry.
This is Liz. Thank you everyone for sharing. I see another hand up from Ivanka. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Curry's question needs an answer. I'm expecting an answer from somebody from the Air District because you're supposed to be a public health agency first.
Yeah, hi, Ivanka. This is Ryan Hayashi, and yeah, I mean, we definitely looked at those, and similar to the information that we've had in the past, we prioritize making comments on land use projects, especially within the 8617 boundaries, and using the information that we have to help inform those recommendations that we have for projects. And this is very much a situation where it is important to engage and share thoughts and concerns about individual projects and things that should be considered if on future projects. It's kind of working on some of these things. It's hard from a conceptual perspective on what may happen in 5 years, 10 years. But when we have projects that are being proposed that are right in front of us, yeah, it is important to look at what is the latest measures in regards to things that reduce emissions directly at the facilities and from the ongoing operations from those facilities, and make sure that any project proponents or people looking to do projects are thinking about those things and taking that into account. And I think the health study is going to be an important tool in shedding light on thinking of things specifically in regards to the pollutants that are being generated from the different types of pieces of equipment that are being used, and so incorporating that those recommendations into those projects.
This is Liz again. Just want to pause and see both Ivanka and Dr. Curry. Do you have any follow-up questions? Just want to make sure yeah, you get the response that you need.
I would just,
No, I didn't get a response, and I don't think that I've gotten a response to that particular question for, I guess, the last couple of years. I feel like this has been an ongoing issue, clearly, and that when there are issues that come up and there are specific cases that come up, my question was whether or not the city or the air control district or any other agency that has access to this information is going to use it on behalf of the community. And so that's the simplest question. And I guess the simplest answer is yes, we will, or no, we will not.
I think there's a lot of people on this call that whether you are from the city or the air district representing those two entities, we only have 10 out of 36. Well, originally originated with 36. We're down to 31 participants tonight. But a lot of those are also from state agencies, as Dr. Curry just stated. And so what's very disheartening, but not new to anyone who understands how history works, is that we as community come forward to public agencies who have the ability to not point the finger at somebody else and say somebody else has authority and it's not my authority. But when you are given, the whole point of doing a health assessment is that most sciences, unless you're dealing with some types of statistics that can change and manipulate numbers, but most sciences is based in facts and data. And so when communities of color that everybody likes to throw around the words of disadvantaged communities and want to stay away from the scary word of environmental racism, But when you're given facts like a health assessment, that is scientific proof of what racism is. Yet in the face of that, we're still just going to completely deny and not fully use, as a humanity, as a group of humans, whatever department you're from, as a group of humans that should be putting health and promoting health first, we're going to just sidestep it. And so the frustration is, like Dr. Curry just said, we have an opportunity, you have this data, the data is very specific to a region that you didn't, out of all of California, we got selected for winning at the worst. And still, even with this data, it's like, oh, this didn't have anything to do with land use. This only had to do with a truck study. Really? No, we all know it's interconnected. And so the fight to continue like it has before, decades before my generation and for the decades after me. It's just unfortunate that we can have a group of people that just want to just ignore science. We're dealing with scientific facts, and nobody wants to use the power in that.
Thank you, Ivanka and Dr. Curry. I can speak to the truck study, and the health assessment did inform the truck study, which is why we added those buffers, regulated areas, and removed mini truck routes.
Yeah, and from the air district perspective, like I said, the health study will be used in helping us make recommendations on, you know, things that need to be considered for individual projects. So it definitely does help inform, which is why it was important to do.
Thank you. And Lily, go ahead.
Thank you. I felt a little bit compelled.
Sí, buenas tardes
by
a todos. Buenas noches, ya más bien.
I'm sorry.
Ivanka, estabas
sorry.
hablando referente a los de los-
Lilia,
¿Escuchan?
one moment. Sorry, Lilia. Lily was going to respond first, and then we'll come right to you, Lilia. Thank you so much. Similar names.
Sorry about that. Thank you for clarifying which Lily. I felt compelled, particularly after the CSC members, Ivanka and Natalie and Dr. Curry, you know, spoke to the fact that, yes, I am a scientist working for the state of California, and OEHA is the agency that develops the reference exposure levels that the air districts use for different, you know, air contaminants, toxic air contaminants, and to the extent that I hear the frustration, I feel the frustration as a scientist myself. And so to the effect that clearly there are political connections to what the science can and cannot inform, and with the limitations of the ability, if you will, I don't feel I have any uplift what I hear in different communities and the concerns at the state level. And I definitely do try to do that. What I also see is problematic, and I'm not trying to like worsen the situation. I'm just literally trying to explain what I see, and where I definitely see public input is needed. Moving this dial with so many different levels of local, state, and federal jurisdiction over different air pollutants. And by that, I mean the criteria air pollutants like PM and ozone, and then the toxic air contaminants, by which the state has a little bit more authority because of the toxic hotspots, air toxic hotspots program. And within that, there's some pesticides as well. It's a very complicated system that we live in. And so to the extent what I see and hear is that these cumulative exposures are definitely cumulative impacts. And to unpack that definitely does take these hard conversations at the different levels of regulators to move the needle. And I know it's incredibly painfully slow, but I hear and I definitely try to move it. And I think that for the different community concerns that I know individually as communities, they don't
perspective, that is how for the state level, I see it needs to be done. And at least for working with the air board, that's where the air districts at the different regional levels have that input into the state's work. And then the state can work with the federal, like US EPA and others to move that. And yes, I apologize for it being incredibly slow, but I just wanted to contribute that to let you know you are in a way being heard. And I don't know if that's helpful or hurtful, but I thought that was worth sharing.
This is Liz. Thank you so much, Lily, for adding that perspective. I do think it was helpful. And thank you, Lilia, for being patient, and would love to hear your comment now.
Sí, nada más es algo simple.
Yes, it's only
Quería darle
something
seguimiento a lo
simple.
que dijo
I
Ivanka
wanted
hace
to
rato
do a
con
follow-up
diferentes ejemplos
about what Ivanka
de
was
diferentes
saying, but I didn't want to
zonas,
interrupt.
con la
It's
compañía de
the
Amazon.
topic
Gracias a Dios que
about the
ustedes,
Amazon
también,
company.
todos
So
los
thank
buenos
God,
jefes
and
ya se
your
movieron
team
de
and
aquí
everything
del
that
área, ya no
you have
están.
been doing, they
Entonces,
removed
ese
them
es el
from the area.
seguimiento.
They're not here anymore.
La
So that's the
segunda
follow-up.
es
And the
que
second thing is that
nosotros estamos por
we
terminar la
are
data.
about to finish the
Ivanka está hablando de
data,
los
and
camiones, nosotros
Ivanka's
estamos hablando de
talking
las
about the
basuras.
trucks, and we're talking
Esta
about
vez
the
recogimos unas
trash.
carretillas
We were
llenas de aceites
able
tiradas
to
en el
get
piso
two
este
parts
sábado pasado,
full of oil this
regalando
last
amor a un callejón. Hicimos, limpiamos dos
Saturday,
callejones.
loving our
Lamentablemente
alleys,
encontramos
and we were
muchas
going
botellas de
on
aceite
two
tiradas
different
en todas
alleys.
partes.
We found
Entonces
all
eso también
these
nos está afectando a
oil
nosotros y
bottles
está
in
perjudicando el subsuelo.
everywhere, and
Entonces es
that's
algo que también es
damaging
alarmante.
the
Tenemos que buscar la
land,
manera de que
and
haya algo
that's
más
something
efectivo en la
alarming.
ciudad
So
de
we have
Fresno
to find something more
para
effective
que
with the city of
podamos
Fresno,
seguir
so
trabajando
we can
en
continue
limpiar esos
working
callejones que
in
lamentablemente
cleaning those
sabemos que son los
alleys that
incendios que
sadly
decían.
we know that we
Entonces,
have our
hoy en día donde
fire
quiera
season
vemos bomberos corriendo de un
very
lado para
high,
otro
and we see
precisamente
the
porque hay
firefighters
incendios.
running from one place
Entonces,
to
para
another way
prevenir
because
esto
we
hay
have
que
those fires.
hacer un
So,
comunicado a los
so to
residentes
prevent
que por
this, we
favor
have to
limpien sus
communicate
malezas.
to the
Si
residents
tienen casas
to
abandonadas, les den
clean all
mantenimiento
the
porque también las casas
extra
abandonadas
grass
están
and
siendo las
all
personas
the
sin hogar y ellos
abandoned
ven muy obvio que
houses.
entre las
People without a
de necesidades
house are living in those
prioritarias, como es la
places,
luz
and
y
they
el
don't
gas,
have all
ellos queman lo que
basic
queman y
needs,
van a quemar
and they're
hasta la
burning
casa y
anything,
volvemos
and
a la
they're gonna
misma.
burn
El
even the
aire
house.
está
So we're going
contaminando.
through the same thing.
Entonces,
The
es
air
algo
is
también
getting
que
polluted.
tenemos
So
que
that's
trabajar.
something that we have
Próximamente
to
terminaremos
work
la data
in
de las libras de basura que
very
hemos
close. We're
echado
going to
familias en la
finish
acción de
with
las
the
calles
data
y
with
callejones de
the
aquí del
Familias en
sureste de Fresno.
Acción and the
Entonces,
things
es
that we
algo
have been
también que
working
tenemos que
here in the
colaborar y
streets of
trabajar
Fresno, and
con
we
la
have to
ciudad
collaborate and
para
work with
que
the
haya
city
multas más
so we
severas a
can
las
have
personas que están
those
haciendo
fines that are more
derramamientos ilegales de
severe
basura
for the
y
people
los que
who are
tiran las
dumping
aceites
illegally
y
and the people who
contaminantes al
are
medio
throwing
ambiente en la
that
calle.
oil
Creo que
and
es
the
nomás mi
things that
comentario.
pollute the streets. That's my comment.
Thank you, Lilia. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I want to thank Lilia for her comments in regards to seeing some change with the Amazon trucks in her area. That's great news to hear. I know that's been something that's been challenging for her for a long time. I do want to share the appreciation with I understand and I'm not questioning any of the comments that were made. I think they're all true comments and the concerns are real. But in regards to the truck study, I do appreciate that the city of Fresno took the recommendations that the health study had indicated as being important to incorporate to address the trucks that they have now. That's an issue we've been hearing from people like Lily in regards to the truck study, is the impacts that the residents are facing right now. And in looking at the study and looking at the removal of over 30 routes in the areas within the community, I think that was important, and diverting those away from the residential areas. I understand the other points about if there's still businesses that they have to drive through, but this is still still going to result in fewer trucks in those neighborhoods, and that was definitely one of the goals, is finding a way to decrease the number of trucks that were going down the roads right in front of people's homes and impacting them. And so understand all the other issues. Like, there's still a lot of work to be done. It's not like and definitely not looking to say that all the work has been done and we're done with this process. We understand there's still challenges, but I'm hopeful with the proposed truck route that this is going to result in fewer trucks in the neighborhoods, which is a good thing. And hopefully we can start seeing those health metrics such as the infant mortality. Hopefully we see the changes. And as the air district, we're going to have to continue to do our work to identify things that businesses can do to reduce impacts in the community, and that's going to be an ongoing challenge for us as well. So, but I appreciate everybody's time and effort. I know a lot of you have spent so much time participating in the different city processes to help inform it and to raise the concerns not only of yourself but your friends and your neighbors, your family members. You know, when you're bringing your voice, it's not just you. We know that it's everybody that you know and that are being impacted. And so definitely just want to thank all of you for continuing to participate in those. And we hear you loud and clear. The job's not done. We still got work to do. Thanks.
This is Liz. Thank you, Ryan. And I just want to acknowledge we are a little bit over time and thank everyone for staying on. We know this is an important conversation and we're not going to cut it off. So I see we have 2 more hands up and we can go to Natalie first.
Yeah, hi. Just a follow-up question. Like after, you know, after like this phase, like in the truck route study, like what are like what's the timeline looking like now? And then my other question, or I think my other ask is like, you know, this report or this plan is gonna be something that's presented to city council, but I really do think it's really important to stress the public health impacts, specifically that the UC Merced Health Assessment found, so that, you know, that is really clear and, you know, shown to city council exactly like, you know, the impacts of like their land use decisions. But I think it's really important to really highlight all the negative impacts or all the negative health outcomes that, you know, that this study really showcased at city council.
And this is Andrina. Thank you, Natalie. As far as next steps, revise the draft report after looking at all of the comments that we have received. Revise where it needs to be revised, adjust where it needs to be adjusted, and then ultimately take it to City Council for presentation. We are currently shooting for mid-August, and I believe that's the 15th. They have a council meeting on that date. And thank you for the recommendation and the suggestion on stressing the health assessment findings.
Thank you. Excuse me. This is Liz, and we can go to our other hand, Araceli. This is Liz again. I see a hand up from Araceli. Do you have a question or comment that you want to share with the group? You are still muted if you're trying to speak. Oh, no? Okay. Okay. Hand up again. Oh, let us know if you, if you have a comment, also feel free to put it in the chat. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're trying to unmute, but we can't hear you. I think, if you do have a comment to share, maybe if you could put it in the chat for us and we'll read it out loud. Oh, okay.
She says that she's not able to lower her hand.
I see that. Thank you. And I will ignore the hand that keeps popping up. Um,
Hi, this is Eric.
oh yeah.
My question is for the Air District. I just want to kind of go back to just kind of reinforce Ivanka's statement she made around just the agency serving as a public health entity. And I know the city of Fresno is also undergoing its climate adaptation and environmental justice plan. And I don't know if anyone from the Air District was at either of their community engagement events, or if the Air District is providing comments or has provided comments. But I just feel the need like to the Air District has such an important voice in that process. And I just don't recall if I've seen anything from the Air District related to that item.
Yeah, we are definitely paying attention to it, Eric, and I'll check in with the team and see what we have provided so far.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we'll add that to our action items. Okay. I just want to acknowledge that we are about a half an hour over our time. I don't see any questions coming up right now, so maybe I can transition us to closing out our meeting. I think we can send all the standing updates. I think we only had one update for tonight, but we can send that via email. And the action items from tonight will also be sent via email, so we won't review them. But as always, please do review the follow-up materials or the action items that are sent out. And if anything is missing or wasn't captured correctly, please do reply back to the Air District and let them know. So at this time, I will transition us to officially closing out our meeting. I just want to thank all of the agency partners for being here. I want to thank all of our CSC members for being here and still engaging in these difficult and frustrating conversations that, you know, the fight will go on, as Ivanka shared earlier. And just want to wish you all a good night. Before we close out officially, I will actually just share my screen very quickly with some information about our next meeting. Okay. So I believe everybody has seen in their email an invitation, excuse me, to the Community Clean Air Day. So the Air District is hosting a conference summit that will be in Fresno. So that's convenient for this group. There's still time to register, I think, if you haven't already. Maybe Ryan can quickly go to you, see if there's anything that you wanted to share about the Clean Air Day.
No, it's really centered on community voices, and we're looking to bring people from all communities throughout the valley that have been involved in not only AB 617, but also local community emission reduction programs and other community voices all together to discuss like ways that we can do things more effectively. And so, yeah, like Liz said, the application is still open. And if you haven't and you would like to, please do so. We are looking to close that tomorrow. So at the end of the day. So if you haven't registered and you're interested, please do so. Thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. And yes, we hope to see as many of you there. Yeah, our facilitation team will be there too. So that'll be a great opportunity for some in-person networking. Just to continue on with the announcements, our next CSC meeting will be August 14th. Some of you may remember that we typically take a break in July. Many people are out of town, and I think there's a conflict with another meeting. And since there's also the Community Clean Air Day, which also CSC members or residents who are a part of the stipend program are still able to get a stipend for that meeting. So there's a few reasons why we won't be meeting until August. There will be opportunity to provide feedback on the August agenda as usual. So do look out for that in your inbox. So I'll stop here and I'll invite Ryan for any final closing remarks.
No, just thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Hope everybody has a good rest of their night. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you everyone again. Good night.